Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into a topic that has sparked debates, stirred faith, and left many wondering. Daniel Kolenda recently released an eye-opening discussion on this very subject. If you're ready to uncover the truth behind these prophetic words and their implications for the future, stay tuned. And before we dive in, make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a prophetic insight.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Well, in case you're watching this someday far into the future, today is January 20th, 2025, Inauguration Day. Today, Donald Trump was inaugurated for the second time as the President of the United States after a 4-year hiatus. He lost his first bid for re-election to Joe Biden and then, against all odds, ran again and won, making Trump one of only 2 U.S. presidents to win a second non-consecutive term. The only other one in U.S. history was Grover Cleveland back in the late 1800s. That's over 130 years ago. So this is really unusual and rare in American politics. And now Donald Trump is America's 47th president, and there's lots of emotions about it on all sides. Half the country is celebrating, the other half is mourning. And, you know, if you've followed me for any length of time, you know that I'm not a political commentator. But today I'm going to make an exception because I want to talk about one particular aspect of this election that is particularly fascinating and interesting to me, the Trump prophecies. And I'm doing this because I want to use this as a springboard for a conversation about prophecy more generally and how it works. Now, this is actually the second time that I'm recording this podcast. The first time was the day after the elections. Trump had just won. We were still waiting at that time for all of the results to come in. I was in Nigeria for one of the last gospel events that we had in the year, and I asked Adam, who was there with the media team, to set up an impromptu recording spot. And so we pulled it together, and we recorded it very quickly. But then as I watched it back, I just felt like I should hold off and let things play out a little bit more. Because, you know, honestly, wherever Trump is involved, things are so unpredictable that sometimes it's just wise to wait. Anyway, I'm glad that I did wait because I think we have more to talk about now than we did a few weeks ago. We know more fully the outcome of the elections, and I've had a little bit more time to reflect, not only on what I think, but to hear what others think as well. And hopefully, this is going to be a very interesting and thought-provoking episode of Daniel Kolenda Off the Record. Hey everybody, real quick before we continue, I just want to tell you about something really exciting that's going on. I think this is going to be a massive answer to prayer for you or maybe somebody else that you know. You may have already heard that Christ for All Nations is launching a brand new school of ministry in August of 2025. So that's coming up here real quick. And this school is going to be amazing. But the thing I really want to tell you about is this. We have decided to offer the first year of the Christ for All Nations School of Ministry completely tuition-free.
Kolenda starts by addressing a burning question. He reminds us that prophecies about Trump's presidency weren't just recent. They date back as far as 2007, long before he even considered running for office. Many dismissed these words at the time, but when Trump won in 2016, it seemed like prophecy had come to pass. However, after his loss in 2020, the backlash against prophetic voices was intense. People called them false prophets, deceivers. Yet fast forward to today, and we're seeing a comeback unlike any other. Kolenda describes what's happening now as Trump remains a dominant force in American politics, and his chances of returning to office are stronger than ever.
Well, folks, Donald Trump has won a second term in the White House. Let me just say that again because it feels so wild to even hear myself say those words. Donald Trump is the president of the United States for a second time. Now, again, if you're watching this at some point in the distant future, it might seem obvious, maybe even unremarkable that Trump won a second term, just a fact of history. But I'll tell you what, from our vantage point at this point in history, this has been the wildest political drama maybe ever. I definitely don't think there's ever been anything quite like it in American history, and I doubt that we'll see anything like it again for a long, long time. Let me just remind you, in case you forgot, the first Trump presidency was unlikely. The second one was impossible. But not only has Trump won, he's won a decisive victory, a clean sweep. Commentators are calling it things like a bloodbath, and it kind of looks that way when you see a map of the election results. Almost the entire country is red. They're calling it a historic comeback, a landslide victory in swing states. And everybody from both sides of the political aisle seems to be in shock. Even the people that wanted him to win and thought that he might win still can't believe it. He won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College vote. Republicans ended up taking the House. They took the Senate. That blue wall of traditionally Democratic states crumbled. He swept almost all of the swing states. He had this huge groundswell of support from minority voters, and the list goes on. And all of this despite the utter impossibility of him winning even once, much less twice. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that in a moment. But just so you know, this episode is really not about politics. I've got something different in mind. And if you follow my Instagram account, you might have an idea of what I'm going to say because, in fact, let me just play this for you. I posted this video on November 5th, which was the day of the 2024 election. And it was probably around noon in America on the East Coast. And I was in Nigeria watching all of this unfold from a distance. Just watch.
This raises a critical question. Were the prophets truly wrong, or was the fulfillment of their words simply delayed? Could it be that the prophecy of Trump's 2 terms was never about terms, but rather 2 separate terms? Let's pause here for a moment. If you're finding this discussion insightful, go ahead and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about this unfolding prophecy. Now here's something powerful. Evangelist Reinhard Bonnke, one of the greatest men of faith, prophesied Trump's victory back in 2016 when it seemed impossible. If someone of his spiritual stature believed in Trump's presidency, shouldn't we take a closer look at what's happening today? Kolenda also reminds us that prophetic words can sometimes be influenced by personal expectations. This is why discernment is so crucial. Just because a prophecy doesn't unfold the way we expect doesn't mean it's false. It could mean that we misunderstood.
So I've got an election question for you. I'm in Abuja, Nigeria right now, watching the elections taking place in the U.S. We're about 6 hours ahead. So I'm about to go to sleep, and when I wake up in the morning, we will probably know who the next president of the United States is. So here's my question. The last time around, there were a bunch of prophets that predicted that Trump was going to have a second term. When that didn't happen, there were critics who openly, publicly called them false prophets and demanded that they repent. But here's the thing. As far as I'm aware, most of them, if not all of them, predicted not that Trump would have a second consecutive term, but just a second term, which means that if he wins now, they would have accurately predicted one of the most unlikely and stunning political upsets in American history. So here's my question. If when I wake up in the morning we discover that Donald Trump is the president, are we going to get some apologies from those people that called those charismatic prophets false prophets? Now that would be an October surprise. And so again, my question is this. What do the critics do with the fact that Trump has won now, given the fact that so many charismatics prophesied that he would win, and many even predicted that he would win twice, and he did? Now, if you've been watching this podcast, you know that I just finished a series not too long ago on cessationism. And I spent probably 13 or 14 hours refuting it biblically and logically and historically. And one of the things that I did in that series was to respond to this film where cessationists had made many arguments, but one of their main arguments that prophecy has ceased was based on the claim that all modern prophecy is false. And their exhibit A for that was the Trump prophecies. Let me show you just a little bit of what I'm talking about.
The problem with the charismatic movement today is that they don't have a single prophet who has been 100% accurate. The honest charismatics will admit that they are wrong far more often than they are right. If you used a magic 8-ball to make all of your choices, you'd be right at least half the time. And charismatic prophets are wrong more often than that. So I ask, what is the value of this gift?
As a younger prophet, I've tried to do the best that I can, to kind of navigate the plans of the Lord. And I had a series of dreams. At the end of 2020, I had seen Donald Trump being elected president.
Many of the modern day prophets made a lot of news with their presidential prophecies. Their prophecies of who would win the 2020 United States presidential election. Of course, all of them, 100% of them, prophesied that Donald Trump would win re-election in November of 2020, and he would serve a second consecutive term in the White House.
Okay, hold on. Listen to what he just said. All of them, 100% of them prophesied that Donald Trump would be reelected in November of 2020 and that he would serve a second consecutive term in the White House. Let's watch it again.
Of course, all of them, 100% of them, prophesied that Donald Trump would win re-election in November of 2020 and he would serve a second consecutive term in the White House.
Now here's where things get really interesting. Kolenda challenges those who mocked the prophets. If Trump is re-elected, will they acknowledge that the original prophecies were accurate? This is a lesson for all of us. We must understand that God's ways are higher than ours, and his timing isn't always what we expect. Kolenda highlights how prophecies often unfold in ways that surprise us. Think of biblical examples. How many times did God fulfill his promises in ways no one anticipated? If there's one takeaway from this discussion, it's this. Even when things look uncertain, even when prophecy seems delayed, trust in God's sovereignty. Kolenda urges believers not to be shaken by what seems like delays, but to stay steadfast.
Now, is that true? Did 100% of these prophets, without exception, everybody said that Trump was going to have a second back-to-back term? Now, let's see the evidence that they provide in that cessationist film to support this claim.
The fireman prophet also predicts the church will thrive.
Will it be an 8-year presidency?
Absolutely.
When I woke up this morning, I heard 4 years. Trump!
Well, obviously, that did not happen, and they just did this massive face plant.
I really want to apologize, sincerely apologize for missing the prophecy about Donald Trump. I prophesied that he would win another term, and I was completely wrong.
We went through this season of me offering a letter of apology to the body of Christ for what I believe was amiss.
Okay, so hold on. Where was the person saying November of 2020? Where was the person that said a second consecutive term? Now, I'm not saying that someone didn't prophesy that. I'm sure someone did. You can certainly find someone that said basically everything. But the claim that you heard that everyone, 100% prophesied that Trump would have a second consecutive term is not established there. They have not provided a single example of that. Forget 100%. They didn't even show us one. Here's what I do hear these folks prophesying. They're saying Trump will have an 8-year presidency. That's happening, folks. Here's another thing they were saying. I woke up this morning and heard 4 years. That's happening, folks. Here's another thing. I had a dream and I saw Donald Trump being elected president. Yep, that's happening too. So where is all the false prophecy again? I'm not seeing it, at least not with the examples that they provided. So do you think, like I said in that earlier video, that there will be any kind of apology or even acknowledgement from the critics that they were actually wrong? Now, I know that some of you are probably saying, well, they did prophesy falsely because they all thought that Trump would win in 2020 and he didn't. And even some of the very guys that you saw in that video later apologized for getting it wrong. So maybe even if they didn't explicitly say that it was going to be a second consecutive term, maybe that's what they meant. And maybe in a moment of honest reflection after that second attempt that was failed, maybe they realized that there was the presumption or flesh or their own soulish desires mixed into those prophetic words. That can happen, and it does happen sometimes. And so if that's the case, they were right to apologize as they did.
He calls on both critics and supporters of these prophecies to reflect on what's happening right now and seek deeper understanding. So what do you think? Are we witnessing the fulfillment of the Trump prophecies in real time? Could it be that the critics were too quick to judge? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if you haven't already, make sure to, so you don't miss future deep dives like this one. Until next time, stay blessed and keep seeking the truth.